So in this tutorial we're going to take a look at some of the overview for a beginner in Visuino and how to get started. First we have the layout, the GUI, we have the workspace where you have the Arduino and the serial terminal or serial monitor if you would like, with a scope, and if you have other components that can output values that you want to view, you choose that over here, and the help pages from the wiki. This is a very thin part right now, but hopefully in time we're gonna populate it with more information, but everyone have to pitch in on that. To the right we have the palette with all the components. You have different categories with specific components within that category, like analog, for example. You have all the analog components over here, and you have this very nice feature, the filter search. So if you know something about that component that you want to use, like you want to convert, for example, from an analog value to a text value, for example, you just type analog. You don't have to type out the whole word. Analog to text, for example, like that. And then you have all the both ways, from the text to the analog or from the analog to the text. And then you see it shows up in different categories, so the same component can show up on more than one place. You have the converters, you have all type converters in here, but it's only the combination with analog and text that shows right now. Then you have the text category with only text related components and analog as well. So if we remove that filter and take a look in analog, you can find everything in there like is related to analog. But the thing I want you to take with you is that the analog category by itself is very, very big. So don't let it scare you off or anything. This is the big one. It's many specific components to specific hardware. But as well, some of the components shows in more than one category with different type of values. So like, let's say you want to take a multi-source, analog multi-source. If I only type multi-source, you're gonna see the same type of icon on more than one place, but for different values, like integer values, char values, analog values, and so on. Then we take a look at the upper pane. You have new, open, zoom level, both buttons, and the roll down menu. And you have auto range, so if you have more than one component and you have made a big mess of it, you can, let's say, like this, you can arrange them. But I've never used it, because if you have a strategy how to lay out everything, so you know what area does what, you don't want to have to change that, because it's gonna mess up your way of thinking. Then you have the outer root component, feature. This means if you have many components, like in this case I only have two, but you see it arrange the cable or wire in between in a specific way. If you disable this and move it, it's only gonna go from A to B, and don't it's gonna be written all over the place, because if you have other components in between, it's gonna go over or under that one. But if you have the outer range, it's gonna avoid drawing over that component. This is a very useful thing to know about, because if you have, let's say you have 100 components, the whole software is gonna be a bit slow. It have to redraw everything as soon as you do any change, and then just to make it bearable to work, you would like to disable this. So every once in a while you update it. So if I'm moving around some stuff like this, and it's a big mess with this type of wires going all over the place, just activate that, move a component a little bit, and it's gonna redraw everything. That's very useful. To the left, we have the overview pane. This is a very useful thing if you have components spread out all over the place with far between, like this. You could scroll this way, or with let's say shift, I think. Yeah, shift, you can scroll as well. This is a very slow way to navigate. So then you just use the overview on the top left. So you can move between different places very fast. Down to the left you have the properties pane. This is where you may do all the changes from the default settings on a specific component. So let's say you use multiply by value. This is a default of value 1, so it's gonna multiply by 1, aka no change at all. So if you would like to make it like 10 times as much, just type 10. Done. So this is where you do all the changes from the default values. And that's a lot. That's very often you do that. To delete, just mark it, press delete, or right click and press delete. If you have, let's say you have one component marked like this, and then right click over here, it's not going to take that one and delete it. It's going to delete the marked one. So just remember that. Well, that's the total overview on the GUI. When you've done the sketch for the first time and will upload it, you can either upload it straight to Arduino, or as I often do, the Arduino IDE first. Because when you're using the hardware, you're gonna choose the hardware over here. Arduino Uno is the default one, and it have to match in the card manager within Arduino IDE as well. So you have to have the same card over here as you have in the software. And of course you have to choose the right port. This is quite easy to understand, I suppose. So how does Visuino work? How do you program it? It's all about flows. So you want to know what value stuff have at a specific point. It's just drag and drop and manipulate the value from one component to another. So let's say I have analog sine wave component. The analog value is normally between 0 and 1. In Arduino IDE it's between, I think, 0 and 255. It could be 223, but I think it's 255. It's not the same over here, but you can change it to whatever you like. But the default is between 0 and 5. 0 and 1. So I am having that component over here, and let's say I would like to change it to 255, for example. Analog, I know it's an analog, and I want to change the range. Map range analog. It's pretty much the same way of thinking as in Arduino IDE. You have the map command that you can change from one value to another. So let's say if I come from 0, 1 over here, put it in over here, it's gonna map that value to whatever I like. So I can make it go from 0 to 1 or 0 to 255. I connect these two. I'm gonna say the value is gonna be from 0 to 1 incoming, and the outgoing is gonna be 0 to 255. And then I'm gonna take a look at it. The serial 0 is the way to look at some values. This is a great way to start working with Arduino. Instead of working with hardware, I encourage you to just use the software and take a look at the values. That's the fastest way to start knowing how to work with Arduino. Now I'm going to have to upload this to take a look at it. And I've changed the board to the correct board and correct port. And it's uploaded. I'm going to close this and connect to the serial terminal, or serial monitor as it's called in Arduino IDE. I'm going to connect, make sure it's the right COM port, and the default baud rate in Visuino is always 9600. Connect. And now I'm going to take a look at some values over here. It's going to go from 0 to 255. I'm going to disconnect so you can see 251, 254, it's pretty close. I'd say it's 255 because it's going to have trouble writing out every single value. It's going to be as quick as it's possible. So otherwise it will look like this. And uploaded. So last time we had a value from 0 to 255. Now it's going to be between 0 and 1. Like this. Let's see. Take a look at it. 0 up to 1. I'm not showing you this just so you can know about this component. I show it for you to know how to manipulate the default values to another value and how to view it. That's the main thing to learn. If you're not using a way to look at the value, to present the value, you're going to have a very hard time, and it's going to take a very long time to learn Visuino's all components. It's going to take forever to learn everything if you're going to use it together with a hardware, because it's going to every once in a while you're going to think wrong and do something by mistake, or even the hardware is not going to work, or you connected something wrong. It's going to be a mess to just look at the end point and see, oh, this doesn't work. Oh, why doesn't it work? Okay, it's going through 10 components, for example. Is it one of those components? Is it the hardware? Is it the wrong connection? The only way to work properly is to view the values from one component to another when you're troubleshooting. In the next part, we're going to take a look at the 3 best ways to present values for troubleshooting and how to think about inputs and outputs.